MSI have provided me with this PC, which I'll be talking about in this video. It's an AMD powered system, sporting the latest 7nm Ryzen processor and Navi graphics card to let you play fast, but also to play cool thanks to water cooling and MSI's X570 motherboard and Sakura 500G case. If Deus Ex is to be believed, then the future is black and gold, so this system certainly puts me in good stead as we head on over into the 2020s. But don't worry, it's also got RGB. We'll start with the gaming benchmarks. The graphics card in this computer is AMD's flagship 5700 XT, which is suited to 1080p and 1440p gaming, and can dabble with higher thanks to some interesting technologies which I'll touch on in a bit. I have MSI's Evoke model, which comes with dual MSI Torx fans, Mech's direct touch heat pipes, and a premium gold coloured backplate. It's also a bit shorter than most other cards of its class, which will help it to fit into smaller cases. At 1080p, it didn't struggle with any of the games that I tested. It scored just under 200 FPS in Rainbow Six Siege, and in Apex Legends it was comfortably above 100 FPS at all times on ultra high settings. There's probably a frame rate cap since most of the time it's stuck at a solid 144 FPS. You can check out the fraps number in the top right hand corner of these clips to see the kind of frame rate behaviour I was experiencing in this game. At no point was there any lag or stutters to speak of. I noticed that when recording with Relive, it would sometimes drop a few frames below 144. The experience was still completely smooth, and despite my complete noobishness at this game, our team still managed to win the match that we played. For Counter-Strike, I loaded up a game of casual and ran about like a madman, a true worst case scenario in gaming. I had no complaints about the smoothness of the frames, even if it didn't help my luck. It scored over 400 FPS in the benchmark at 1080p on high settings, and when dropped to 720p, this number rose to over 450. I also tried PUBG, thinking it was a poorly optimised game, but I think they may have made improvements to it because the frame rates weren't just very high, but also very consistent. You can see the sort of frame rates I'm getting here, well over 100 at all times. The only situation it dropped below this was when I drove around the outskirts of a town where there was a large battle raging inside, but even then it remained smooth. I tried to get a closer look at the action, but then this happened. Of particular interest to these kinds of competitive games is AMD Anti-Lag, which reduces the delay between your PC and your monitor. I have no way of measuring the difference this makes accurately, but here are AMD slides on it showing the difference that it makes, and when you're talking competitive games, milliseconds matter, so it's good to see that AMD is offering features such as these for the more serious gamers among us. Moving up to 1440p, and I found that performance in competitive games remained high enough to be competitive. This is PUBG on ultra settings at 1440p, so there's a lot of room to tinker with them if you want to. My main regret was not configuring my controls, because I missed out on some amazing opportunities that I never normally get in this game. The only time I got it below 60 was in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, with everything on ultra high, and even then I got 58 and the minimums remained above 30. Dropping the settings to high bumped the average up to 79 FPS. This card is very much designed for 1440p at very high settings in today's games. Moving beyond this is where it gets interesting. At 4K I still got above 30 FPS in all games I tested, with 60 being achievable in most if you lower some of the settings. But another one of AMD's new technologies is worth mentioning here. Fidelity FX is a sharpening tool. You can see the difference it makes in Assassin's Creed Odyssey here, using the Reshade plugin. But we don't just want sharpening. It also conveniently helps to make upscaled pictures appear more detailed again. If you have a 4K monitor and run a game at, say, 80% of that resolution, it will run a lot faster than full 4K, but will look blurry because it's been upscaled. However, if you then use Fidelity FX on it, the sharpening will bring out the edges and some of the detail that may otherwise have been lost in the blur somewhat. It doesn't make extra detail out of nowhere, but it enhances what is there, bringing the perceived clarity back up close to that of native 4K, as opposed to that of a blurry upscale. This opens up a lot of possibilities, which will allow for you to more closely tailor your game to whatever your personal preferences are in regards to frame rate, resolution, and sharpness. Before we move on to other components, here are the 3D Mark results for the MSI 5700 XT Evoke. Firestrike at 1080p, Firestrike Extreme at 1440p, and TimeSpy at whatever resolution that runs at. Onto the processor, which is a Ryzen 3700X. This is of particular interest to me, since I was previously using an 1800X. Both have the same 8 cores and 16 threads, but 2 generations of improvements means that the 3700X manages to be faster, while consuming less power and costing less. In short, the 3700X will offer great performance in both games and productive workloads, which is ideal for a YouTuber such as myself. Here is how it performs in numerous CPU benchmarks, and with my older 1800X there for comparison. which remember still has the same number of cores and threads. In CPU-Z, the single core performance is over 27% better, and the multi-core score has improved by 25% over my first generation Ryzen. And in Cinebench R15, the new Ryzen 3700X is over 30% faster. In the newer Cinebench R20, the 3700X scored 4677, which compares to the others like this. If you're wondering where my old computer's score is, I was unable to get the program to load since the Microsoft Store insisted that I didn't have 4GB of RAM or something stupid like that. Oh well. Overclocking Ryzens is something of a tricky area for me since they're already finely tuned. They're continually monitoring themselves, lowering clock speeds and even shutting parts down to save electricity when they're not in use. But when you start doing something, it gets even more interesting. All parts of them immediately wake up and ramp up to high speeds. There are star cores which perform the best, and these are used to ensure optimal single core performance. All of this is monitored in real time to get the best performance while remaining within safe power and thermal limits. The third generation of Ryzen does all of this automatically. What you can do is to ensure that it's kept cool, which will allow for it to ramp up to higher speeds and for longer. In this case, it's being cooled by a cool Holomorphic Master Liquid ML240R, which is a dual fan water cooler with built-in RGB and a replaceable cooling cap. The plus side of this is that the logo can still be the right way around, even if I install the whole thing upside down. These components are all housed in MSI's MEG X570 Ace motherboard, which comes with a lot of built-in features. It supports 2.5GB/s LAN, and if you find yourself in the dire situation of not having a LAN cable, you can use its built-in Wi-Fi, which has support for MIMO and BSS color and all that to help with a good connection even under dire circumstances. To keep things cool, it comes with an extended heat pipe design and a Frozza heatsink, unique to the MSI X570 series of motherboards, and all cooled by a patented double ball bearing fan. It has PCIe 4 support to ensure no bottleneck with the GPU, and if you have an SSD and a hard drive, then you can use Store MI to combine the two. The idea is, as you use your system, it will intelligently move the games and files that are used the most to the faster SSD part of things. It's an easy, hassle-free way to get the speed of an SSD with the storage capacity of a hard drive. This is a good time to mention the SSD in this system. I'm using a 1TB Corsair MP600. As you can see from this crystal disk mark result, it can read and write more than 4000 MB/s, while normal hard drives max out at about 100. This reassuringly means that your storage won't be the bottleneck in the system. It also comes in 500GB and 2TB variants. The MSI MEG X570 Ace can support 3 of these M2 storage devices, and has 4 SATA connections as well. As for the RAM, I'm using 4 sticks of Corsair Dominator Platinum 8GB 3200MHz RAM, with aluminium craftsmanship, tightly screened high-frequency memory chips, and 12 ultra-bright individually addressable CAPLX RGB LEDs. And it's all powered by a Cooler Master V750 Gold, which as well as being gold rated, also happens to be black and gold. It's a fully modular PSU with enough power to easily drive this system. And this is all housed in the towering MSI MPG Sakura 500G case. In the case of this tower of a case has all sorts of built-in fans and extras, including a removable radiator bracket which made installing the water cooling a hell of a lot easier. It has a generous number of the latest and fastest USB plugs on the front, some huge built-in fans to keep it all cool and quiet, and with this bit around the edge which is reserved for airflow. All of this is housed in a brushed aluminium and steel construction, finished off in tasteful and future-proof black and gold. What's black and gold and RGB all over? I've only mentioned it in passing so far, but the motherboard, the liquid cooling, and the RAM are all RGB. Within MSI's Dragon Center software is Mystic Light. This is a control panel where you can sync all of the lights in your computer, which for me includes the MSI motherboard and its infinity mirror, the Corsair RAM, and the Cooler Master liquid cooling. There's the option to synchronize it all with supported games, or you can choose the effects and colors yourself, which I'll be doing now. Of course, to suit the black and gold theme, I set it all to a golden colour. I tried black as well, but it didn't work and then I felt stupid. But don't worry, we'll just have to wait for night. Any second now. And there it is, my MSI PC in beautiful black and gold. What do you mean that's boring? You want RGB? Fine. Have it your way.